She paid for everything. Food, rent, even his car. When she came home early, she caught him cheating in her bed.
From rock bottom. This is a true story. The names and some events have been changed to protect the identity of those involved. You are listening to From Rock Bottom. Subscribe to the channel and keep respect in the comments. Do you have an inspiring story of overcoming challenges? Send it to us by email.
I paid for everything. Rent, food, even his car. Then I came home early and found him cheating in my bed. You think you'd see the signs. You think love wouldn't blind you that hard. But I was so deep in it. I didn't just miss the red flags, I paid the bill for every single one of them. This is not just a story of betrayal. This is about how I gave everything and how he gave it all to someone else, including my bed. Stick with me, it gets worse before it gets better. But I promise, the ending, you're gonna want to scream. You know that kind of love that feels like a movie? That's what I thought I had. That's what I wanted to believe. I met him during a really weird time in my life. I had just moved to a new city, gotten a fresh job, and I was trying to build something stable. I wasn't even looking for a relationship. But then he walked in, tall, charming, confident. He made everyone in the room laugh without even trying. And when he looked at you, it felt like you were the only person on the planet. He asked me out a week after we met, and I said yes. From the start, things moved fast. He didn't play games, he was affectionate, he texted good morning and good night. He made me feel seen, and I, being the hopeless romantic that I am, fell hard, way too fast. But in my defense, he was so good at being exactly what I wanted. He told me he had just left a toxic relationship, that he was staying with a friend temporarily, looking for a place, trying to rebuild. He said he'd been through hell and was finally trying to get his life back on track. I admired that. I thought, wow, here's a guy who's vulnerable, who wants something real, who's honest about his situation. He moved in with me after 2 months. Yeah, I know it sounds fast now, but at the time, it felt right. He didn't have anywhere stable to go, and we were inseparable anyway. He started bringing clothes over, toothbrush, laptop, and one day, he just never left. I let it happen. And then, slowly, I became the provider. At first, it was small things, groceries here and there, paying the internet bill. No big deal. He said his job was unstable, that he was trying to get hired full-time, and I told him not to worry, that I had it covered, that he'd get back on his feet. But months went by, then a year. And I was still paying for everything. Rent, me. Food, me. His car insurance, me. Random emergency expenses, you guessed it, me. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that relationships are about supporting each other, that this is what love is, sacrifice. But deep down, I knew something was off. I just didn't want to admit it, because if I admitted it, I'd have to face the truth, that maybe he wasn't who I thought he was. He made me feel guilty whenever I brought it up, said I didn't believe in him, that I made him feel less of a man. He'd sulk, withdraw, and I'd be the one apologizing. Every time. I became exhausted trying to keep things together. I was working long hours just to make sure our bills were paid. And he was home all day. Sometimes he'd cook, sometimes not. Sometimes he'd say he was working on freelance gigs or talking to recruiters. But I never saw any results. No income, no job offers, no change. But I still defended him, to my friends, to my family, to myself. I told people he was in a transition, that he was trying, that he needed time. But they weren't blind. My best friend pulled me aside once and said, "You're dating a full-grown man-child, and he's milking you." I got mad. I told her she didn't understand. I even distanced myself from her for a while. Looking back now, I know she was right. But love is funny like that. It tricks you into thinking red flags are just temporary inconveniences. It makes you ignore your gut because you're too scared to start over. I wanted him to be the man I believed he could be. I wanted to be the one who saved him, who helped him turn his life around. I had a fantasy in my head, and I was clinging to it with both hands. But deep down, I knew I was the only one trying. I was pouring everything into this relationship time, money, energy, love, and he was just existing. He'd say things like, "One day, I'm going to take care of you. Just wait." Or, "When I make it big, you'll see. You'll never have to work again." And I believed him, because I wanted to believe. Because admitting the truth that I was being used was too painful, too humiliating. Until one day, I came home early, and everything changed. But we'll get to that. It was a Wednesday. I remember that because I usually worked late on Wednesdays. Meetings, reports, the usual grind. But that day I got lucky, a last-minute cancellation. So I packed my things early, thinking maybe I'd surprise him. Maybe we could have dinner together, watch a movie, just be a couple again. I was feeling hopeful. Things had been tense lately. Money was tight. I was tired all the time. But I missed us. I missed the way it felt at the beginning. So I stopped by the grocery store, grabbed some wine, picked up ingredients for his favorite pasta. I even bought those stupid overpriced candles he liked because I wanted to make the night feel special. I parked the car, walked up the stairs with my hands full, and pushed the door open quietly, expecting to find him on the couch, probably in sweatpants, maybe half asleep. I had this whole scene in my head. I'd walk in, he'd smile and say, "You're home early?" And I'd say something like, "Surprise, I missed you." But that's not what happened. The lights were off, the TV was on but low, and there were clothes on the floor. At first, I didn't register it. I just stood there blinking. His shoes, a jacket I didn't recognize, a wine glass, 2 plates on the table. My stomach dropped. I put the groceries down slowly, trying not to make a sound, and then I heard it. A laugh. A woman's laugh. From our bedroom. I don't know how I moved. My body felt numb, like I was floating or dreaming, but I walked down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. My hand was shaking when I touched the door handle. I pushed it open. And there they were. In my bed, in our home. He didn't even jump. He just froze, like a child caught doing something wrong. And she pulled the blanket over herself and looked at me like I was the intruder. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there watching the man I loved scramble for excuses he didn't even believe. "It's not what it looks like," he said. God, the cliche, the audacity. I think I laughed. This ugly, hollow laugh that came from somewhere deep in my chest. I couldn't believe it. After everything, the rent, the bills, the sacrifices, the endless second chances he had the nerve to do this. In my bed, in the sheets I washed, under the roof I paid for. The woman, she gathered her things and ran. Not a word, just grabbed her bag and bolted. And he just sat there. No shame, no apology, just this blank, infuriating silence. And that's when the tears came. Hot, blinding, unstoppable. I wasn't crying because of him. I was crying because of me. Because I let this happen. Because I gave everything I had and it still wasn't enough. Because the person I loved most had turned into a stranger in front of my eyes. I packed his things that night. Every sock, every charger, every damn hoodie. I stuffed them in trash bags and threw them out the door. I didn't care if he had nowhere to go. I didn't care if it was late. I wanted him gone. I needed him gone. He begged, swore it was a mistake, that he was lost, that it meant nothing. But I was done. There's something that breaks inside you when you realize someone never valued you. Not really. They valued your comfort, your support, your stability, but not you, not your heart, not your worth. And once you see that clearly, there's no unseeing it. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the fact that he cheated. It was the realization that I had enabled it. I had built the perfect nest for a snake and then wondered why I kept getting bit. I changed the locks the next day. I told my boss I needed time. I didn't tell her why. I couldn't. How do you even explain something like that? That your boyfriend of 2 years cheated on you in the house you paid for while you were buying groceries to cook for him? I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I replayed it all in my head 1,000 times. The nights I stayed late working overtime to pay his bills, the gifts I bought him, the way I defended him to my friends, the way I ignored my own exhaustion just to keep the peace. And for what? For a man who looked me in the eye every day and lied. It took weeks for the fog to lift, but when it did, I saw everything clearly. He never loved me, not really. He loved the life I gave him, the comfort, the security, the illusion that he was someone he wasn't. I was his provider, his therapist, his cheerleader, his landlord. But I was never his partner. He was never mine. The silence after someone leaves is loud. It echoes in the smallest things, the toothbrush still in the cup, the empty spot on the couch, the one coffee mug left dirty in the sink. I had kicked him out, but his presence lingered like smoke. Every room whispered reminders of who we used to be before the illusion shattered. The first few days felt like free fall. One moment I was sobbing on the bathroom floor. The next I was furiously scrubbing every surface like I could bleach him out of my life. I'd go hours feeling nothing, and then collapse into tears over the most random things: a song, a jacket, a half-used bottle of his cologne I found behind the dresser. I couldn't even bring myself to delete his number. Not yet. I kept staring at it like it might ring. Like he might call, like he might apologize, beg to fix it, say anything that would make it make sense. But no call came. Instead, I got silence. So I started talking to someone else, a therapist. I never thought I'd be that girl, the one crying in a stranger's office about a guy who cheated. But there I was. Every Thursday at 4 p.m., unraveling the years of self-abandonment disguised as love. I told her how I paid for everything, how I brushed off red flags like lint, how I thought love meant sacrifice, even when the sacrifice was me. She listened, gently, without judgment. And one day, she asked something I'll never forget. She said, "What would you tell a friend who went through the exact same thing?" And I said, I'd tell her to run, to never look back. And just like that, I realized I had been giving everyone in my life compassion, except myself. That shifted something in me. I started treating myself like I would a friend. I cooked meals not for anyone else, just for me. I cleaned, not out of rage, but out of care. I lit candles again, bought flowers for my table. I stopped waiting for someone else to bring me joy. I began rebuilding it myself piece by piece. I told my friends the truth, not the sugar-coated version I gave them before. We broke up. It wasn't working out. No, I told them what happened, that I paid for his rent, his food, his damn car, and you repaid me by sleeping with someone else in my bed. Their reactions were a mix of outrage, disbelief, and validation. Some said they never liked him. Others just hugged me and cried. But every single one of them reminded me I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I had loved deeply, generously, and that wasn't something to be ashamed of. I started writing again. Not professionally, just in a journal. At first it was angry. Pages of raw, unfiltered pain. But then, little by little, the words softened. I wrote about hope, about healing, about rediscovering who I was before him and who I might become after. There were hard days, nights when the loneliness crept in like fog, and I had to remind myself out loud that being alone was better than being lied to, that freedom, even painful freedom, was still freedom. I got rid of our shared furniture. The bed was the first to go. I couldn't stand to look at it. I sold it cheap on a resale app and slept on a mattress on the floor for a week. It felt symbolic, like stripping everything down so I could rebuild from scratch. And I did. I bought a new bed, all white, fresh linens, no memories, just peace. Eventually I blocked him, not out of spite, but because healing needed space, and I deserved mine. There was no closure text, no dramatic goodbye, just silence. The same silence he left me with. And strangely, that felt like enough. People kept asking, "How are you doing?" And I'd smile and say, "Better?" Sometimes it was true, sometimes it wasn't. But I said it anyway, not to lie, but to manifest it into reality. And slowly, it became true. I went back to things I loved. Walks in the park, Sunday mornings with coffee and a good book, music that made me dance alone in my kitchen. I started dating again, nothing serious. Just dipping my toes back into the world, and I learned something surprising. I didn't need anyone to fix me, because I was never broken. I was betrayed. Yes, hurt, taken advantage of. But broken? No. If anything, I was rebuilding stronger, wiser, more awake. I stopped looking at my past as a collection of mistakes and started seeing it as a map. Every poor choice, every ignored instinct, every second chance that should have been the last, they were all breadcrumbs leading me back to myself. One night, months later, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, though maybe she did, but because she felt free. I smiled at her, proud, peaceful, whole. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't see a woman who had been cheated on. I saw a woman who had left, who had survived, who had chosen herself. And that was everything. There's a strange kind of power that comes with starting over. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not a sudden moment of clarity or a perfect Instagram-worthy transformation. It's quiet, messy, uneven. It's crying in the shower on a Monday and then waking up on Tuesday and feeling a little lighter. It's realizing you laughed, genuinely laughed, and forgot about him for a few minutes. It's noticing your reflection and seeing strength where there was only sorrow. That's what the rise looked like for me. After everything, the lies, the betrayal, the heartbreak, I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. I started with the smallest things. I changed my sheets, got a haircut, rearranged my furniture. It might sound silly, but it mattered. I needed to shift the energy around me to make space for the me who was finally coming back to life. I cleaned out my closet and threw away every piece of clothing that reminded me of him, the dress I wore on our anniversary, the sweater he said looked good on me, the lingerie I bought for him. Gone. All of it. I wasn't dressing for memories anymore. I was dressing for the woman I was becoming. And she was done apologizing for loving too hard. She was done shrinking herself to fit into someone else's version of enough. She was done waiting for happiness. I dove into my work like never before, not to escape, but to reclaim. I had spent so long pouring into someone who only took. Now I poured into me. I said yes to projects I was scared of. I raised my rates. I pitched bold ideas. And slowly, I started seeing the results, not just financially, but emotionally. I felt capable again, valuable, seen. I also made a list of everything I had put on hold for him. Trips, hobbies, friends I stopped calling, dreams I had shelved to be practical. That list became my mission. One by one, I checked things off. I booked a solo trip, just me in a backpack. I was terrified. I almost canceled, but I went. And it was one of the most liberating experiences of my life. I walked through unfamiliar streets, ate alone at candlelit tables, took photos just for me. I wasn't running from heartbreak anymore. I was running toward myself. And somewhere along the way, I started to like who I was again. Not the girlfriend, not the caretaker, not the woman who paid for everything and got cheated on in her own bed. No. I liked me, the unfiltered, unguarded, unstoppable version of me. The one who was learning to trust her gut again. The one who didn't apologize for taking up space. I also started saying no more. No to people who drained me. No to situations that made me feel small. No to second chances that weren't earned. And with every no, I felt stronger. I joined a local women's group. We met every week to talk about healing, boundaries, joy, growth. It was raw and real and sometimes uncomfortable, but it saved me. Hearing other women share their stories made me feel less alone. Their strength lit something inside me. We weren't just healing individually, we were rising together. One night, I came home from a meeting and opened a new journal. I wrote a single sentence on the first page. I am not broken. I am breaking free. That became my mantra. I repeated it when the loneliness crept in. When doubt whispered that maybe I had made it all worse. When a friend told me he was spotted with a new girl. I didn't spiral, I didn't cry, I just whispered that sentence and breathed. I even started dating again slowly, carefully. Not looking for someone to fix me, not needing validation, just connection, fun, conversation. I learned what I liked, what I didn't like, what I deserved. And one night, after a perfectly lovely first date with a guy who actually listened, I came home, looked in the mirror, and smiled. Not because of him, but because I realized I wasn't looking to be chosen anymore. I was choosing myself, and that was the rise. Not the fireworks or the grand gestures, but the quiet, daily decision to love myself better than he ever could. I stopped trying to rewrite the past. I stopped needing closure. I accepted that some people will take everything you give and still walk away. Not because you're not enough, but because they never knew how to receive what you offered. And that's not your burden to carry. I began planning my future again. Not our future, mine. I signed up for a course I'd been eyeing for years. Started writing again. Took long walks without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I fell in love with my mornings, the quiet coffee, the stillness, the feeling of possibility. I wasn't waiting for happiness anymore. I was creating it. Somewhere in the middle of all that, between the healing and the becoming, I realized something important. The worst thing he did to me gave me the best chance to rediscover myself. And that was the real gift.